The focus this month is the wise use of power. And Susan Gum started us off with kind of exploring about being more aware of the fact that we have power and how do we want to use it. And also she talked about skeletons. So that was kind of a special talk. But the thing I want to point out, though, is that the talks, because Louise talked last Sunday, and she talked about, for me, how to use the feminine part of who we are. And that's both for men and women, to make us help us to become more compassionate, to help us embrace and heal the places where people feel separate from each other and from their truth. And I want to include Rowan Conrad also into this. Even though he was at the end of last month, I feel like his talk actually fit into this month. And Rowan was, one of the things that stood out for me was he's talking about ways in which we block the experience of our love. Because this is our truth. So it's so important to become aware of how we end up blocking and interfering with the experience of that truth. And he said one thing that I thought was very powerful from one of his teachers, Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist Vietnamese teacher. And Thich Nhat Hanh was quoted as saying that if you're not in gratitude, then you're going to be suffering. And it's really worth contemplating that, because that seems like a very immediate and gentle way to help lift us out of the experience of suffering at any particular moment. And a lot of times our suffering is unconscious. We're not aware of it. So part of what I want to look at today too is just becoming more conscious of who we are and the choices that we're making, because this affects our power. Charles Fillmore, which I rarely refer to, in the chapter on power, said a couple interesting things. He said that we don't tend to experience our power just because we just don't have an awareness that we have it. We tend to live our lives as though we are powerless, and we live in fear, constant fear, if you look more deeply into ourselves. But he said, even though we have new ideas coming into us now, they're still going to be kind of rubbing up against all the old ideas, all the old concepts. And he said, because of that, our experiences are like the tides. There's an ebb and a flow. Just because we read something or study something, it seems so elusive. It seems to start to disappear and go away for a while. But that's because within our consciousness and our subconsciousness, we have all these different beliefs and new beliefs kind of working and rubbing against each other. So it's a process. It's not usually instant, although it has the potential to be instant. This past week, I was reminded of something called the Blessing Way. And this is a part of a spiritual process that traditional Navajos sometimes use to start their day, the rising of the sun. It's a way to attune to the truth of who they are, in the hopes that they don't keep falling asleep throughout the day. And the part I wanted to share is a part that you've heard before. It's a part of the prayer. It's a part of their ritual. There's more to it. But these words will be familiar with you, I believe. Because one time the choir has sung this, maybe a couple times. Now I walk in beauty. Beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me, above and below me. And it's a prayer. It's a prayer I imagine they repeat many, many times to take it deeper and deeper into the feeling part of who they are. For that's where the power is. The power is is allowing these words to become more than words, to become a part of our feeling nature and to go deeper. There is only one presence and one power, the all-loving goodness of God. If I say that just with my lips, it ends up kind of going into the left hemisphere of my brain. And that part of my brain does not know the truth of who you and I are. That part of the brain helps us function in this particular reality that we call duality, because it operates on those laws of plus and minus, opposites, night and day, big and small, conflict, separation. But if we say it and allow it to come down into our feeling nature, more into that intuitive part of our being, into that creative part, it starts to come into that heart space and that part of the mind that knows the truth of who we are, even though we don't think we know. And that's the magic of it. It always knows. There's a part of God that's there that knows the truth of who we are. And so as we say things and allow it to come down into that part, it starts to resonate with the part of us that understands and knows. And then it takes on power. It starts to vibrate the truth of who we are, that we're here opening ourselves to it. During the week while I was working on the talk, there was a message on the answer machine. And I could tell that the message had the potential to maybe make my life much more complex and difficult and stressful. And it wasn't going to be something I necessarily wanted in my life. Now, I had a choice, didn't I? I could project my fear into that message. And I could create all kinds of possible scenarios. And that happens automatically. At first, there's that feeling in our gut. There's that anxiety. We try to push it away. We try to protect ourselves. We want to be safe. Or I could stay in that beauty. I could know that beauty is before me. I can know that if I'm still, I will know that there is God. That beauty way, the blessing way, it's to carry that. I walk in beauty. It's to carry that through every situation that comes before us and to rest in the peace and the truth of who we are. And from that place, from that connection to that and feeling deeper truth of who we are, then we can look at and allow our life to unfold in the love that is its truth. We can stay out of it to some degree instead of trying to control it, instead of projecting all kinds of possibilities that may or may not happen. So it's more than just saying the words. It's staying in the truth of those words as we walk through our day. There's where the power is. There's where we access our truth. We create by what we think, feel, and believe. So we need to pay attention. What am I thinking? What am I feeling in this moment? What am I believing in this moment? How does it align with the kinds of things that you and I hold in prayer when we're together here? The things that we read and we study. The truths that we hear that resonate in that part of us that knows that, yes, that is the truth of who I am. I may not understand it. It may not make sense. But there's a part of me that feels that. I know. And so consequently, we are here you made the effort to be here when it's such a beautiful day. When we experience the world out here, when we experience it through this part of our being, it scatters the power of who we are. Because it looks like there's an infinite number of problems. It appears that I'm separate and vulnerable, that I have to protect myself. And this mind says, yes, you have to protect yourself. And there's things that, yes, sometimes we do need to do certain things. But sometimes we make it much, much more involved than it probably needs to be. And I was thinking about the example of a magnifying glass. You probably remember playing with them as a child. And so you had the sun, the light of the sun coming through the glass. But as you moved that glass, you realized that you could condense the light and the power of the sun. And you can create a fire with it. And when you had it back in another position, that light was so diffused it did nothing. You couldn't even hardly feel that if it was on your hand. So concentration and focus is an important ingredient to the power that is within us. This world, the fact that it looks like it's infinite variety, takes our attention out into the infinite variety. And that's okay, as long as we save a part of ourselves and stay into the oneness of who we are and keep that focus onto that truth instead of scattering and becoming diffused so that it has such little power. I mention mystics here oftentimes, probably every time. And what I mean by the word mystic is a being that lives and has their being in the oneness, and that comes, a part of them comes here to help you and I know our truth. Because without experience, it's impossible, very, very difficult to know and to understand who we are and to understand the things we read and talk about. And so they come that maybe we can trust, maybe like a Jesus or a Buddha, but there's so many, many more that come and do this work. They come that we may have something to hold on to. Realize, wait, this being is not talking from intellect. They're not talking because they have a PhD or an MD at the end of their name. They're talking from experience. They're talking from an integrity that we know and can feel, wait a minute, this being would never lie to me. This being is only here to tell me about the truth. And so that gives us something to kind of hold on in this journey of venturing into something that appears to be disconnected from us, but that's not its truth. The physical universe, they say, the mystics and the Course in Miracles, which some of you study, both of them say that our experience of this mind is not real, it's an illusion. And so there's no way to really understand that until we experience it. But I'll read a little bit of a description. Now in the East this is referred to as Maya. But it's still the same illusion that's talked about in the Course in Miracles. And I imagine there might be even references from Jesus. It says here, a definition of Maya: illusion, deception, unreality. It's the phenomenal or the physical universe. The entire physical creation is a part of this illusion. Basically, anything that's not eternal. So these bodies are not the truth of who we are. At Christmas, we emphasize that the mystics say we are the Christ. There's that potential to experience that within all of us. We are one in God. There's never been separation. Our being is eternal. You know, I'm using a body of a male this time. I have memories of female. So in this lifetime, it allows me to kind of play both in order to maybe model that one doesn't have to be afraid of the particular sex that they're playing. The illusion appears to be real, but it's not. The veil of illusion that they talk about conceals the vision of God from our sight. And so this is why it's important to be aware of that, so that we can slowly kind of maybe loosen our grip on what appears to be so true and so real. We need to be in it, though, but just not of it. To go through it and know that beauty is within me and beauty is going before me. But going through in the world in that consciousness that there's only one presence, that there is only one power. We are never separate. I first kind of came across, well, I became aware of this idea through a book called The Disappearance of the Universe. But then I discovered that some of the writings of some mystics that I was reading also said the same thing. I just hadn't caught it. And so I'll read this part here from a mystical writer. The Lord is never unmindful of us, even for a moment. We have never been separate from the One, from Him, from God, whatever we want to call it. We won't understand it until we experience it, so it really doesn't matter too much. He is always with us and always pervades our entire being. Now, I want to look at both of those. So we have never been separate. And this is where our pain comes from, is the belief. And this is why that story of the prodigal son is so powerful. And something kind of interesting, I recently read that some scholars were re-looking at the Aramaic translations of that story, and they realized that what it really said was prodigal daughter. Now that's a joke, guys. Scholars are becoming inclusive. I have a friend one time, she just looked at me and was listening to everything I said, and I finally had to stop and say, look at, I lie a lot, don't I? So, the prodigal son, I thought prodigal daughter. It was never separate. It was always being held in the mind of the Father. It just thought it was separate from the Father. It was self-judging itself. And maybe it believed in its heart that it had separated. But for the Father, it never was separate. I read that He is always with us, always pervades our entire being. This is what we turn to. We can't do this with the ego. The ego is a part of the world of this mind, this perception of you and I being separate. But because the oneness is always within us, we can turn to that. And there's different names for it. They call in Course in Miracles, it's referred to as the Holy Spirit, or the wholeness of spirit, the wholeness of you. So it's always there. And we're not here doing this journey as an ego. We're here to heal that illusion that we're separate from each other and we're separate from love, or that we're separate from anything. This is what we hold in prayer when we're doing prayer, is going, no, all these appearances oftentimes are symbolic of the belief that I'm separate, that I'm vulnerable, that I'm less than, that I lack, that I need to be in fear. And what we want to do is hold the truth, that no, that's part of the illusion. The truth is that we are one, that we've never been separate, that the infinite power is always present within you and I, and that we can open to that. Also, we've never been judged, nor has anything been judged in this creation by God. So not the people that have opposite beliefs of us, not the people who do heinous things. And why is it that none of that has been judged? Because it's not real. It's not the truth of what we're seeing. It's not the truth of who those beings are. Those beings are you and me. Because in unity, don't we say there is only one? There's only one. And so we keep opening ourselves to that. Not that we can see it or experience. And that's how we get to forgive. We forgive because it's not real. The only thing that's real is that there's only God. There's only one. You walk in beauty. I walk in beauty. There is only one presence in you and me. And that's an illusion because we don't understand it yet. But none of this is true. We're told that we're one. When fear arises, I have an opportunity. Instead of projecting all kinds of scenarios, I can pivot. I can gently turn and know and remember the truth that I am God, that I walk in beauty, and beauty goes before me and goes before you and is our truth. For we are love and we are loved. Amen. Thank you. So we're going to take a moment to be in prayer. And I want to do a little advertising. Back in the foyer, if you haven't gotten it, there's a booklet. And we're very fortunate that Linda makes the choice, and our board makes the choice, to purchase these when they become available. I mean, they're offered to us individually, but the church purchases them so that it's available to everyone. And this title is Messages We Need to Hear. And I think it could be very, very useful. Of course, we all have different needs, but the writer of this is a woman who was the head of Silent Unity, I think for something like 33 years. She was also born into a family that was friends with the Myrtle and Charles Fillmore. So her whole life was kind of enmeshed in a spiritual focus and perspective. There's a lot of power in her words, and I think you might find it useful. And she has here, and we'll just follow this and go into prayer. The true silence, that is the communion with God, is more than just being still. The beginning is to be a simple act of stopping all the outer talk, the outer striving, the outer straining, the basic act of being still. Be still. So let's be still. Just gently close our eyes if that's comfortable. Just take a breath and come down into your beingness and open to an infinite potential of who you are. Be still. Breathe and relax. Just relax and open. The presence of God is always within you. Be still and know that you are God. Be still. Breathe and relax. Allow that to come into your heart. Breathe it into your heart space. Be still. For I am one. Be still. For I am love. In my oneness, in my stillness, I have never been separate from the oneness and the power and the love and the safety and the grace. I breathe and relax. I open to that truth of who I am. I open to its help, to its love. I'm not here alone. I have never been judged. And so I surrender my judgments to the presence of the truth that I am. Forgive me for judging you. We are both forgiven. We are one. We are safe. We can choose to walk in beauty. The presence within me is here to help me to walk in my truth. To be in this world, but not of the illusions of separation and fear and conflict. I can be in this world opening to the truth of you and I, of all creation. That behind the veil of fear, we relax, we are one. We are love. We are loved. And the grace is helping us in this moment and every moment to walk in the truth, to walk in beauty, to walk in oneness, to walk in love. And we give thanks. Amen. Oh, thank you, Roger. This is why we need each other. Okay. So we will do our prayer of protection.
It's on the back there of the script for the flowers.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. There's more than one back. Boy, okay. Here we go. So, okay, so let's do the prayer of protection together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.